All right, so listen up. Ontario Premier Doug Ford said it was, quote, disgraceful to see social media videos of Toronto District School Board students marching alongside a pro-Palestinian rally. So Ford calling it indoctrination and said they should be in a classroom learning instead. So there's been an investigation. It's now underway. This field trip was for a separate event, or supposed to be for a separate event, in support of the Grassy Narrows First Nation. So, B, should civil disobedience even be a part of a child's school education?
See, here's what I'm going to say. It's not a question of should it be. It already is. It always has been. The issues arise when we are talking about civil disobedience. Who is it in support of and who is it against? That's when people get their backs up. I think about a protest situation that was happening throughout Ontario sometime last year, where parents and community members were protesting against what they believed was being taught in sex ed in schools. I went out in Durham Region to support queer kids who were there and saw a ton of kids who were out there when they should have been in school. And that seemed to have been okay. I didn't hear Doug Ford say that those kids needed to be in school in those protests. And this is something that's just been happening throughout history. I'm sure there are people watching this show where if you look back in your photo albums, maybe your grandparents were at protesting against schools that had devolved with segregation, right? So we've got people who were living this and who grew up in this and who understood civil disobedience was a part of what their rights were. We only start to have these issues when we don't like what the issue is in support of. And I think about Martin Luther King Jr., everybody likes to make him this teddy bear who had dreams about his children and, not being judged on the color of their skin and instead the content of their character. But I urge everybody to read his letter from a Birmingham jail, where he talks about the importance of civil disobedience. And he talks about the necessity of being able to push back. It's a moral responsibility, he says, to push back against unjust laws. And the other thing I'll say, too, this can go in so many different directions, but Doug Ford and other people like him are not living in the reality that these children are living in at all. And that's on many different levels, but in this particular level, injustice is not, there is no one single injustice. And kids are seeing in the schoolyards, they're seeing when they see protests downtown, when they're having conversations on social media, injustices are connected. And young kids are getting to understand that. So it makes sense that some of these you might think are differing issues are colliding in one event, but when injustices are connected, this is inevitably what happens. So if Doug Ford thinks there's blinders that you can put on children so they can only see what he thinks they need to see, he's not living in reality and not serving our kids.
I love everything you said. I think coming at this topic, I pulled out and did a drone view of all sort of civil disobedience, because I like the idea of teaching our kids what civil disobedience is. But I don't like the idea of teaching our kids what to be civilly disobedient about. Because I think that bigger picture, that could cause, you end up pressuring some kids to support a cause that either A, they don't understand, B, that they don't agree with. And that's gonna lead to a great deal of questions. I think it's an educator's role to present them with the buffet of ideologies and let the kids choose their own adventure.
So can I ask you this? Would you like this idea? Because I thought about this, which is that I feel like we've also lost the art of the debate, right? And so this was happening in a school in Granville, Michigan. A group of fifth graders were tasked with creating essays about something they found they were passionate about, and in an effort to persuade, kind of in the spirit of what we used to do in old school debates. And as an extension of these essays, after they wrote them, they did an in-school protest where they wandered around the classrooms and in and out with their own signs, things like kids should have cell phones, to no more plastic bags, to orcas should not be in aquariums. So they picked a cause that they felt passionate about and that they could defend, and they learned what protesting is, but inside the classroom.
That's self-guided education.
What do we think about that?
Self-guided education. That's not a teacher saying
this is what it is.
You're right. I actually agree with that, but I will also say, are we not in the era of truth and reconciliation? I would really like to challenge any person who still believes that a grave injustice was not done to the Indigenous peoples that were on this place called Turtle Island. So I'm just curious, You know, the original, how this all went down, I'm not going to say that it sounds like there was at the very minimum, an organizational mishap. I have a hard time believing that the 15 schools were involved where all of a sudden these kids ended up, I guess it sounds like, at a pro-Palestinian rally. The original school trip was supposed to be in support of Grassy Narrows. Grassy Narrows is a place that is dealing with mercury poisoning in their water since the 70s. They do not have clean drinking water in Grassy Narrows. Tell me one parent or teacher who thinks that we shouldn't be teaching this to our children. I don't know where those people are. The way it went down, I got some issues with that. Listen, I do believe in protest. I have taken my daughter to protest in support of Indigenous rights. Why? Because we are all so Catholic. And there's that thing called residential schools, and the injustice is done largely at the hands of churches like the Catholic Church. It is important for my daughter to see the impact that has been done and is still having had effect on people today. So Grassy Narrows, this is the thing I will ask the Doug Ford government. In the 1990s, it turns out, at least according to the Toronto Star's reporting, that the provincial government was aware of the mercury poisoning in the water in Grassy Narrows and kept it a secret. I'd like to ask Doug Ford about the government's role in what's happening in Grassy Narrows and leave the kids out of this discussion.
Yeah. Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.